Coming up, let's talk about the cardinal sin of falling in love with the wrong new car, because I do that all the time. I'm John Cadogan from AutoExpert.com.au, the place where new car buyers save thousands off their next new cars. Hit me up on the website for that. Every time I'm critical of a car, which, let's face it, is fairly often, the fanboys out there trot out the same tired old accusations. He hates all cars, that kind of thing, right? So let me set the record straight on that. Why am I here? I'm not here to tell you about which cars I love and which cars I hate. That's simply not the case. I love all of the wrong cars too, but falling head over heels for a car is generally a very bad way to buy a new car. I'm here to tell you which cars are a good idea to own or not. There's a pretty big distinction there, I think you'd agree, especially if you don't know that much about cars. Average car buyers are not actually car enthusiasts. Most people buy a new car every 3 to 5 years and they just hope it works out okay. But the majority of the viewers of reviews, right, they're not going to buy a new car. They're just watching road test porn, especially when it comes to cars they can't afford and they never get to drive, like M5s and Porsches, you know the drill, whatever. It's voyeurism, and if that's you, recreational streamer of road test porn, enjoy this free festival of road test rocks off getting. Knock yourself out. I think we can all agree, for example, that a car like a C63 AMG is awesome. Is it a good idea to buy one? Emphatically not, because they're just not that reliable, and Mercedes-Benz is the 3-point swastika of customer service and support. At least they are disgracefully poor at it all here in Shitsville. So, contrary to popular belief, I loves me a good AMG car, and I have driven heaps of them hard on very good roads, which was always uplifting. And, you know, anything Audi with the RS badge, anything like that, also awesome to drive. Holden V8s, now sadly dead. I love them too. And that supercharged Ford V8 was brilliant. And the Death Trap Mustang, I just want one. I want it carnally. But it is a bad idea to buy a car designed seemingly to kill you in a crash. I think it would be fair to say that I would need a fair old aircraft hangar for all the cars I love, but would never in good conscience tell you it's a great idea to own. The Jeep Grand Cherokee. I want one of those, obviously. Preferably the SRT. I think that's fair. If there is a heaven with Jack Bauer in charge, and I believe there is, he's driving from cloud to cloud with a certain vengeful gleam in his eye, rescuing nuns with big cans and killing bad dudes with AKs in a Grand Cherokee SRT. Yes. So why am I telling you this, okay? All those cars that I love and more, from the brands on top of my shit list, the ones that I allegedly hate, but hey, I secretly love them. It's really simple. There's a massive gulf between test driving a car and owning it. Road test porn is not the 5-year lock-it-in deal. It's a fling, and the journo doing the vicarious flinging for your on-screen pleasure is often sucking the car maker off under the table. So there's that. At the other end of the spectrum then, here's me, kicking brands like Volkswagen, Ford, Holden, Jeep and Land Rover very hard in the nuts, occasionally. The breathtaking scope of their bad behaviour, those companies, is just so much fun to report. It's so newsworthy. Journalism exists to highlight bad behaviour in every domain, and these assholes do bad stuff like it's an extreme sport. Over the past 5 years, the reality of car maker bad behaviour has been stranger than fiction. But I've never had a PR operative from one of those brands ring me up out of the blue and tell me that I got it wrong. And believe it or not, I would be receptive to that because accuracy is important. Volkswagen, right, they put profit before human health, and thousands of people will die prematurely as a consequence. That is what Dieselgate is. And I'm not making it up, it is a scientific fact. I've never had a call from Volkswagen to argue the toss on that, not once. Holden, right, they effectively stole billions of dollars from the Australian taxpayer. They accepted $275 million in taxpayer-funded bailout and committed to remaining here in Australia, building cars here for at least a decade. They made this commitment to the Prime Minister of Australia. It was an unequivocal promise. And they closed the factory anyway. They kept the money. And they sent $150 million back to Detroit. And we paid for this, you and me. We only know they did that, sending the money back, because the corporate regulator had to be notified of an offshore transfer that large. And Holden still pays no income tax. And yet, publications, for example, Bauer Media, they're still more than happy to act as if they are Holden's fluffer on the set of a third-rate pornographic movie. And I have some first-hand experience of this. See, when I was a domesticated car reviewer working on industry sucks specialist publications like Wheels magazine, there was a Holden PR chick named Kate Lonsdale, and she would call me up any time they all had a meeting and decided there was some trivial issue with some story that I had written. She seemed like a dog with a friggin' bone, that chick. Anyway, that's probably not the best or most complimentary simile, but at least that's how it seemed to me. She was certainly tenacious, let's be kind. At times, I felt as if I had been summoned by the headmistress. So yes, motoring journalism is that unhealthy. But now that I am off the chain, unplugged, a new man, liberatingly enough, telling the truth about companies like Holden, deafening silence from the PR fraternity. Nearly 2 million views a month on this channel, and thank you very much for that. 45% of those views in Australia, and nothing from the PRs. I think it's just so strange for those assholes actually to be criticised in the media that they just don't know how to play it. They're in ostrich mode, which is frankly hilarious. Anyway, perhaps I could forgive these immoral car maker behaviours, the gassing, the $250 million taxpayer rip-off. Forgive is the wrong word, obviously. Those behaviours are intrinsically unforgivable. What I could do, though, is not take this into account when assessing what cars to recommend to you. A car maker behaving, tomato, a car maker behaving like a bunch of immoral shitheads is perhaps only peripherally relevant to buying a new car. So I could recommend, say, a Golf GTI to you tomorrow, or a Holden so-called Commodore, or a Grand Cherokee if in fact it were a great deal. But the sad truth is they are unreliable and customer support is shit. And this is the awful core truth about the cars that I sometimes love, like you, but don't recommend. This is the rock-solid deal breaker in the domain of car buying rationality. If your Volkswagen, Holden, Ford, Mercedes-Benz, Jeep, Audi, Land Rover, Skoda, etc. has a problem, which is quite likely because they're not that reliable, and then those car makers are very likely indeed systematically to treat their obligations under Australian consumer law as if they're optional, that would be bad for you. And they are fuck you over specialists, I'd suggest. This is a double whammy of unacceptable experiences for you. You've locked yourself into some 50 grand deal over several years, maybe more. The car is off the road for weeks to months, and the car maker couldn't give a flying proverbial. That's not fun. I mean, I've had fun. That's not it. So in a nutshell, I do not hate those cars. I've loved every Range Rover I have ever driven. Would I buy one? Not with a friggin' gun at my head. I mean, get real. So I'd suggest, finally, there's a modern kind of hysterical epistemic dichotomy that's playing out inside the limited cognitive capacity of many online commenters. And you've probably seen this, although you may not have labelled it in that way. Everything, it seems, is reducible to love or hate. He criticised X, therefore he must hate it. That kind of thing. It consigns everything to the domain of opinion, right? It's blondes versus brunettes or something. Completely polarised. Chocolate versus strawberry. And, you know, while loving a Range Rover certainly exists in that epistemically, subjectively, emotionally driven domain, I assure you that recommending you don't buy one is wholly evidence-based. It's ontological. In my universe, where the facts really do matter, it would be totally irresponsible of me to do road test porn for you and deliver the granular detail of my perversely carnal satisfaction, getting my rocks off, driving some car that I happen to know you should never buy, and yet conveniently gloss over this fact. But that's what most car reviews are when you scratch the surface. They are a suck to the car industry disguised as a resource for you, the new car buyer. You think the review is there for you, right? It's actually just there, though, to occupy some online real estate so that the publisher can be paid for running the car maker's advertising. That is the business model. And I'd suggest to you that journalistic integrity does not survive under that regime. It cannot, because if the comment is critical, the car maker pulls its ads and the money goes away. This definitely affects the tone of what is said. So you'd want to consider that, I think, if you're in the market now. And you certainly are allowed to buy a car with your heart as opposed to your head. It's a free country. Just do not be surprised if that ends badly.